Gottstein realized he needed a unique event to attract the racing world's attention. In 1935, he put up the unheard-of purse of $10,000 for the Long Acres Mile. No other racetrack in the country featured an event at that distance for that amount of money.
Well, I think the Long Acres Mile was a big contribution to the sport up here. Even though the purse was only $10,000 in 1933, that was a lot of money. We were used to racing for, in fact, I think the purses at Long Acres here that year, the minimum purse was probably about $400.
Joe Gottstein wanted a race that was going to really emphasize his track, and he had connections throughout the racing industry, in the West Coast particularly. And so he was able to talk top owners, top jockeys who had the good horses to come up and participate in the mile against the local horses.
Well, the first mile was an absolute atrocity. There were 16 horses in the race. One of them went off at the gate. One went off about 100 yards down the gate. Bowed a tendon. We had a horse that broke a hind leg. And we had horses strewn all over the racetrack after the race was over. There were 4 or 5 horses that were pulled up and stopped and put in a trailer and vanned off the track. And these were nice horses. They'd come up from California, and they brought one horse up from California. His name was Biff. He was the favorite. They brought him in from Omaha. He'd gone from California to Omaha and won a big race there, and then came up here to Long Acres. He finished second in the mile. It was won by a horse called Coldwater, who was a long shot.
Despite the successful turnout for the Long Acres Mile, handicapping in the Northwest was still a novelty, and the amount wagered daily, the handle, wasn't enough to cover expenses. To keep the track afloat, Gottstein was forced to sell the Coliseum Theater, as well as his share of the semi-pro hockey team, the Seattle Seahawks. Idris lost confidence in the racing venture and sold his partnership, telling Joe he was a fool to keep it going. Financially strapped, Joe turned to his good friend B.N. Hutchinson, a former Washington State Secretary-Treasurer, who put up enough capital to keep the track running. It was during this difficult period Gottstein married Luella Venino, daughter of a University of Washington music professor.
It was an awful struggle at first, but Joe had tenacity. He hung on like a bulldog. He knew it had to work.
On the backstretch, life for the horsemen was equally challenging.
It's most kind of a family affair that they had a tent city or trailer city across from the stable gate where the freeway is there now. It was a berry field. And they had 2 streets down there, run quite a ways down, and they had a lot of people living there and lots of families with their children.
Before I was married, when we moved around, well, we would haul the horses in a van, and then when we'd get to the place where we were going to be stabled, why we would unload the horses, and then we would clean the van out, and that would be our living quarters. We'd park it usually in the trailer park or some rental space and clean it out, and that would be our living quarters.
Well, Long Acres was very colorful. It was just a little community like a family, and we had people like Bat McCune, who was a starter, and Beans Kennedy, he was another starter. Chick O'Neill, he was the announcer. Bones LeBoy, Whistling Harry, Foots Madrell. There were just so many people. Some of them didn't have names. That's how they knew them. Buster Wiles, of course, one of our most famous individuals down there.
$1 Million Smith.
$1 Million Smith.
He's still there.
And they're just characters that developed down there. And
well,
earlier days on the backside, they didn't have the walking machines. You had to hand walk all your horses. And when you run a horse, it was real neighborly. You'd run a horse, and if you didn't have time to walk the horse and clean the stall, one of your neighbors would come over and cool the horse out for you while you did your stall. And it was really happy times. And of course, it's happy times on the backside now, too, but people are more to themselves.
It's basically a mom-and-pop operation. There were times when you would see a little old man and wife that had one horse, and they're winning, 3 or 4 races through the summer. It was the only horse they had, and nobody would claim it because it's their last horse. And that's just the way people were.
The horsemen had hard times. The purses were 300, 400, and there was lots of times when Mr. Gutstein would come and help the horsemen out. Some of them, when he knew there was nobody that ever left here without any money, he would take care of them. And a lot of the people that bought farms around here during those times, he helped them out too with a down payment on a place, or maybe made some payments for them. And he did a lot of these things. And he was a tough man, but he was tender too.
Horses are funny things. Probably more than 20,000 thoroughbreds are foaled each year, and the breeder of each one thinks he has a Kentucky Derby winner.
Joe Gutstein was the thoroughbred industry for many years. Matter of fact, he was, I would say, was the man till the day that he passed away. You had to have a market. He provided the market. It was the only viable market that we had. The minor tracks were okay, but they really didn't provide enough earning power, so he was it.
He didn't buy any horses himself. There was a word was around that he owned half the horses on the racetrack, and he might have controlled, but he didn't own them because he'd get his friends to buy them. The biggest client that he got involved in racing was probably Bill Boeing, and he encouraged anybody that'd come along to get a horse,
Gotstein knew that a successful track needed a strong supply of thoroughbreds and helped organize the Washington Horse Breeders Association to foster the breeding industry's growth. He also added 3 new stakes races at Long Acres exclusively for Washington-bred horses.
Probably the best horses bred at that time would not compete favorably in bottom claiming today. Thoroughbred horses at that time were rather nondescript. Number one, the bloodlines were not too good. We only had 2 or 3 decent breeders in the state. And secondly, the animal husbandry job of raising horses was lacking a lot.
For Gotstein, the sole reason for building a track was to race his horses. He called his stable Altea's Farm, Seattle spelled backwards, and owned some of the fastest thoroughbreds on the coast. Breeders and owners wanted nothing more than to beat Joe at his own game. Gotstein's horses won so frequently, state commissioners assumed he had an unfair advantage and banned him from racing at Long Acres.
I built this track so I'd have a place to run my horses. Is there anything wrong with a man eating at his own restaurant? I tell you this, if they want to win stake races here, they better buy some good horses.
Fearful that Gotstein was running his horses under other stable names, horsemen decided that it is better to know thy enemy and convince the Racing Commission to lift the ban.